I was kidnapped. The kidnappers called my husband, who was at that moment intimately engaged with his white moonlight. Your wife is in our hands, bring 10 million to exchange for her. On the other end of the phone, my husband's voice was cold, she's not worth that price, go ahead and tear the ticket. I closed my eyes in despair. However, the kidnappers suddenly untied my ropes and respectfully handed me a cup of hot tea. Miss, the chairman has instructed that if the son-in-law dares to say no, deal with him on the spot, and the company will be inherited by you. Holding the cup of hot tea, my hands were still trembling. My dad? Yes, the burly man nodded obsequiously. The chairman said this is called a stress test. I suddenly found it somewhat amusing. My father, the chairman of the Lin Group, a businessman who never believed in tears, only in interests and human nature. He used a meticulously planned kidnapping to tear apart the affectionate facade of my 3-year marriage. And Simon, he didn't even pass this simplest test. What does deal with mean? I asked. The burly man made a throat-slitting gesture, his eyes fierce, processing in the physical sense. The chairman said that keeping such a heartless thing is also a scourge. I shook my head, no need, leave him to me. I want to watch him lose everything he's been eagerly pursuing. The burly man, who was my dad's security captain Mike, personally drove me home. It was a riverside villa in the prime downtown area, our marital home with Simon, and the property deed had only my name on it. The car stopped at the door, but I didn't get out immediately. Mike looked at me through the rearview mirror. Miss, if there's anything, just instruct. Mike, I began, besides you and me, who else knows about today's events? Only a few absolutely reliable brothers. I'll report personally to the chairman. Good, I nodded, treat today's events as if they never happened. Later, I might need to trouble you again. Miss, you're too polite, serving you is my honor. I pushed the door open and got out, using my fingerprint to unlock the home door. The living room was brightly lit. My husband Simon was embracing a woman on the sofa. That woman was my own sister, Lily. Lily was wearing my silk nightgown, her long hair disheveled, her small face crying like pear blossoms in the rain. Simon was holding her, softly comforting, "Don't be afraid, Lily, I'm here." The air was filled with their intimate scent, a decadence I was familiar with but had never sensed on them. The silk nightgown on Lily was my favorite one, now like a glaring mockery, tightly wrapping her smugness. Seeing me enter, the two jumped apart like cats whose tails had been stepped on. A flash of panic crossed Simon's face, but he quickly composed himself. He stood up, walked to me, his tone carrying a hint of reproach. "Where did you go? Your phone wasn't connecting." I looked at him, this man who just moments ago wanted me dead, now playing the anxious husband. It was truly laughable. "I had some matters and went out for a bit," I said indifferently. Lily also came over, timidly holding my arm, her eyes red-rimmed. "Sister, don't blame Simon, he was just too worried about you. You weren't answering the phone, we were almost dying of anxiety." She was always like this, with a weak and pitiful appearance, even the biggest mistakes, coming from her mouth, became excusable. From childhood to adulthood, it had always been so. When she broke Mom's favorite vase, she would cry and say, "Sister pushed me, I didn't mean to." When she lost Dad's important documents, she would sob, "Sister asked me to get her homework book, that's why I accidentally dropped it." And my parents would always point at my nose and scold, "You're the older sister, can't you yield a bit to your younger sister?" I brushed off her hand, my gaze falling on Simon. "Is that so? You were very worried about me?" "Of course," Simon frowned, "you didn't say where you were going, do you know how anxious I was?" "Then why did you tell the kidnappers to tear the ticket just now?" My voice wasn't loud, but it exploded like a thunderbolt in the living room. Simon's face instantly turned pale. What are you saying?" Simon's voice trembled a bit. "What kidnappers? What tearing the ticket?" Lily also widened her eyes, looking innocent. "Sister, did you see wrong? Simon has been with me the whole time." I smiled. I walked up to them, took out my phone from my bag, and pressed play. It was the recording I had Mike secretly make. Your wife is in our hands, bring 10 million to exchange. She's not worth that price, go ahead and tear the ticket. Simon's cold and heartless voice clearly echoed in every corner of the living room. His face turned from pale to ashen. Lily was also stunned, mouth open, unable to say a word. Now, do you want me to repeat it? I looked at Simon. He opened his mouth, seeming to want to explain, but couldn't utter a word. The recording was ironclad evidence. Claire, let me explain. He finally found his voice and took a step toward me. I stepped back, avoiding his outstretched hand. Don't touch me. His hand froze in midair, his face showing a hurt expression. I thought it was a scam call, you know, there are many such frauds nowadays. Oh? I raised an eyebrow, a scam call would tell you to die? That's not what I meant. He urgently explained, I panicked for a moment and spoke without thinking. Panicked? I looked at him as if seeing him for the first time. Simon, we've been married for 3 years, in your heart, am I only worth it? Spoke without thinking? No, Claire, believe me, I love you. In his urgency, he tried to hug me. But Lily suddenly screamed, clutching her stomach and falling to the ground. Ah! My stomach, it hurts so much. Simon was immediately drawn to Lily's scream. He rushed to her side, picked her up horizontally, his face showing anxiety and panic I had never seen. Lily! What's wrong? Don't scare me. Simon, my stomach hurts so much, our child. In his arms, Lily cried breathlessly, her small face wrinkled in apparent extreme pain. Child? My mind buzzed. 2 years of bitter traditional Chinese medicine, the disappointment after each pregnancy check, his gentle comfort, it's okay, Claire, we're not in a hurry, I love you, it has nothing to do with children. Those lies that once warmed me immensely now felt like cold knives, slowly torturing my heart. Simon, holding Lily, rushed past me like a gust of wind. Claire! If anything happens to Lily, I'm not done with you. He roared this at me and disappeared through the door without looking back. I stood alone in the spacious living room, my hands and feet cold. So, they not only betrayed me but also had a child. And I, the fool kept in the dark, had drunk 2 years of bitter and astringent Chinese medicine to conceive his child. Every pregnancy check, he accompanied me. Every time the doctor announced the results, he would hold me and gently comfort, it's okay, Claire, we're not in a hurry, I love you, it has nothing to do with children. Now thinking back, that gentleness was just as meticulously woven lies. Those check reports were probably tampered with by him long ago. My phone vibrated, it was a message from Mike. Miss, found out, Lily has a file at Renai Hospital's obstetrics and gynecology, pregnant for 8 weeks. Renai Hospital was exactly where I did my pregnancy checks every time. And Simon's university classmate was the director of obstetrics and gynecology there. Everything connected. I slowly walked to the sofa and sat down. Once I thought this was my harbor, now it seemed nothing but a luxurious cage. I picked up my phone and dialed my dad's number. Dad, it's me. On the other end, my dad's steady voice came, figured it out? Figured it out, I said, I want a divorce. And I want 30% of the Lin Group's shares. This was left to me by my mom, but when I got married, my dad transferred it to Simon's name under the pretext of training him, as a stepping stone for him to enter the core management of Lin Group. Okay, my dad agreed readily, I'll have the lawyers handle it tomorrow. Claire, wait a moment. On the other end, my dad's voice carried a hint of coldness, I'll have Mike send you the financial secret reports of Simon and Lily over these years, as well as evidence of their conspiracy, to your email immediately. One more thing, I paused, Simon and Lily, neither should think of getting away easily. There was a moment of silence on the other end. Lily is your sister too. When she didn't treat me as her sister, I no longer have this sister. My dad sighed, as you wish. After hanging up, I looked at the dark river surface outside the window, my heart calm. This battle had just begun. The next day, I didn't go to the company. My dad's legal team was very efficient. By morning, they had drafted the divorce agreement and equity transfer agreement and sent them to the villa. I signed them, placed the agreements on the coffee table, and waited for Simon to return. He came back only at noon, looking exhausted with dark circles under his eyes. Seeing me sitting on the sofa, he was stunned for a moment, then walked over, his tone much softer. "Claire, are you still angry? Last night was my fault, I was too anxious." "How is Lily?" I asked, my tone as calm as asking about today's weather. He paused and said, "Nothing serious, the doctor said it was just fetal distress, needs bed rest." "That's good." He seemed unprepared for my calmness, somewhat at a loss. "Claire, I know I was wrong, I shouldn't have yelled at you. But Lily, she is pregnant with my child after all, I can't ignore her." He said it righteously, as if I was the one who cheated. I looked at him and suddenly found it very funny. "Simon, let's divorce." I pushed the agreement on the coffee table toward him. Seeing the words, divorce agreement, his face changed again. "I won't divorce." He refused without thinking. "Claire, I love you, I can't live without you." Lily and I were just momentarily confused. "I swear, I'll cut ties with her completely." "Cut ties?" I countered, "what about the child in her belly?" He choked. "I'll give her some money, have her abort the child, send her abroad, and she'll never appear in front of us again," he said urgently, as if making an incredibly difficult decision. Looking at his hypocritical face, I felt only disgust. "No need," I said, "you leave with nothing, I'll let you and her live happily together." "Leave with nothing?" He acted as if hearing the biggest joke. "Claire, don't forget, the company now has 30% shares under my name. On what grounds do you make me leave with nothing?" "On this." I took out my phone again and played another recording. It was my conversation with Mike. "The chairman has instructed that if the son-in-law dares to say no, deal with him on the spot." Simon's face completely lost color. He collapsed on the sofa, looking at me as if seeing a devil. You and your dad conspired to scheme against me? It's you who couldn't withstand the scheme." I stood up, looking down at him. "Simon, sign it. Otherwise, I don't know what my dad will do." Simon looked at me, his eyes filled with fear, unwillingness, and a hint of malice. He picked up the pen, his hand shaking badly, and signed his name on the agreement. He also signed the equity transfer agreement. After signing, he slammed the pen on the table, looking as if his spirit had been drained. "Claire, you're really ruthless." "Not as much as you," I said indifferently, "you're the one who wanted me dead." He had no strength to refute. "Now, you can get out." I issued the eviction order. He stood up, staggering toward the door. At the door, he suddenly turned back, looking at me. "You'll regret this." I ignored him. After he left, I called Mike. "Mike, send someone to follow him and see where he goes." Half an hour later, Mike called back. "Miss, he went to Renai Hospital." As expected. He still couldn't let go of his precious darling and that child. I changed clothes and drove to Renai Hospital. When I arrived, Simon and Lily were arguing in the ward. The ward door wasn't fully closed. Standing at the door, I could clearly hear the conversation inside. "What did you say? Divorce? Leave with nothing?" Lily's voice was sharp and piercing. "Simon, are you crazy? Have you forgotten our original plan? What can I do?" Simon's voice was full of irritation. "Claire's dad somehow found out about us and set a trap for me. If I didn't sign, I wouldn't even keep my life. Then what about our child? What about our company? What about the money we invested?" Lily cried out, "That's all our savings. Keep your voice down." Simon lowered his voice. "The most important now is to stabilize Claire. Once the storm passes, I'll find a way to get the shares back." "Get them back?" "Easier said than done." Lily sneered. "Do you think Claire is still the fool you could manipulate before? She's clearly out to ruin us now." Then what do you suggest? A crisp slap sounded in the ward. It must have been Lily slapping Simon. Useless thing. Lily cursed, if it weren't for your bit of brains to help me get Lynn's shares, I wouldn't be with a Phoenix man like you. Lily, don't go too far. I'm going too far? Simon, get it clear, now you're the one with nothing. What do you have to act tough with me? I stood at the door, listening to this dog-eat-dog drama, without a ripple in my heart. I pushed the door open and walked in. Seeing me, the argument in the ward stopped abruptly. Lily lay on the bed, tears still on her cheeks, seeing me, a flash of panic in her eyes. Simon, covering his face, saw me and looked embarrassed and awkward. You continue. I pulled a chair and sat down, leisurely looking at them. Don't let me affect your emotional exchange. Lily bit her lip, silent. Simon's face alternated between green and white. Claire, what are you doing here? He asked. I'm here to see my dear sister, I emphasized dear heavily, and by the way, hear your grand plans. You heard everything? Lily asked, her voice trembling a bit. Didn't hear it all, I shook my head. Why not tell me from the beginning? For example, when did you start? And for example, what's with your company? Both were silent. Not saying? No problem, I smiled, I have plenty of time to investigate slowly. I stood up and walked to Lily's bedside. She subconsciously shrank back. Don't be afraid, I leaned down and whispered in her ear, I won't do anything to you. After all, the child in your belly is the Shin family's flesh and blood. I straightened up and looked at Simon. Take good care of her, after all, she's your only hope now. With that, I turned and left. Leaving the ward, I immediately called Mike. Mike, help me check a company, one jointly opened by Simon and Lily, probably registered not long ago. Mike, contact the media immediately, I want Simon and Lily's scandal known to everyone within 24 hours. After hanging up, I left the hospital. The sunlight outside was a bit glaring. I squinted and drove straight to the company. From today, the Lynn Group would be under my control. I returned to the company and went straight to the chairman's office. My dad was practicing Tai Chi in front of the floor-to-ceiling window. Seeing me enter, he slowly finished. All settled? Yes, I nodded, the divorce and equity transfer agreements are signed. That kid Simon didn't make a fuss? He wouldn't dare. My dad smiled and poured me a cup of tea. I knew he was just a good-looking but useless embroidered pillow. Dad, I looked at him, you knew about him and Lily long ago? My dad sighed, neither admitting nor denying. Claire, you're my daughter, I won't harm you. Someone like Simon has too much ambition but not enough ability, keeping him by your side would be a scourge sooner or later. Then why didn't you tell me earlier? If I told you, would you believe me? He countered, back then, to marry him, you almost severed father-daughter ties with me. I fell silent. Yes, back then, I was blinded by love, plunging headfirst into the gentle trap Simon wove, not listening to anyone's words. What about Lily? How do you plan to deal with her? I asked. She's your sister. My dad repeated this sentence. When she harmed me, she didn't think of me as her sister. My tone cooled. Dad, don't interfere in this, I'll handle it myself. My dad looked at me, his expression complex. After a long while, he nodded, you've grown up. Leaving the chairman's office, I directly convened all the company's executives for an emergency meeting. In the meeting, I announced two things. First, I have divorced Simon, and all Lynn Group shares under his name have been transferred back to mine. Second, effective immediately, I will officially take over as president of Lynn Group, fully responsible for the company's operations and management. As soon as the news came out, the conference room was in an uproar. These executives were mostly old ministers who built the empire with my dad. Naturally, they had doubts about me, this parachuted miss. Especially the vice president, Tom, my second uncle's cousin, who had always eyed the president's position covetously. Claire, he said with a fake smile, you've just taken over the company, not familiar with the business yet, such a big burden, can you carry it alone? Whether I can carry it isn't up to you, Tom. I looked at him, neither humble nor arrogant. The company isn't mine alone, there are all of you here. I believe, with everyone's assistance, Lynn will only get better. I paused, then changed tone. Of course, if anyone thinks I'm incapable, or has ulterior motives, they can resign now. I won't retain them. Lynn doesn't keep idlers, let alone traitors. My gaze swept over everyone present. The conference room was silent as a pin drop. Tom's face looked somewhat ugly. I knew this was just the beginning. To stand firm in Lynn, I must show real strength. After the meeting adjourned, Mike called. Miss, found it. The company is called Yadong Technology, registered half a year ago, legal representative is Lily, but the actual controller is Simon. The address is in the office building opposite our company. What about the business scope? Highly overlapping with our company's bidding for the West City Smart City project. I understood. Simon and Lily had planned long ago to hollow out Lynn and start anew. The West City Smart City project was the top priority for Lynn in the second half of the year, with massive manpower and resources invested. If this project was snatched, it would be a fatal blow to Lynn. Mike, help me with a few things. I lowered my voice and instructed over the phone. After hanging up, I looked at the building opposite where Yadong Technology was, and had a plan in mind. Simon, Lily, your game is over. The next day, I went to work as usual. Just arriving at the office, the assistant knocked and entered, looking panicked. Claire, bad news, our West City project's core technical plan has been leaked. Leaked? I feigned surprise. How? This morning, the bidding competitor Yadong Technology published their plan on their website, and it's identical to ours. I opened the computer and clicked on Yadong Technology's website. Indeed, their plan, from technical architecture to implementation details, was almost pixel-level copy. And their release time was 2 hours earlier than ours. This meant, to the outside world, it looked like Lynn copied them. The office phone was soon bombarded. Partners, media, shareholders, everyone called to question. Internally, people were panicked. Tom was the first to rush into my office, slamming a newspaper on my desk. Claire, look at what you've done. In just a few days, the company is in chaos because of you. What face do you have to sit in this position? The newspaper's front-page headline was in bold black letters, Lynn Group falls into plagiarism scandal, century-old reputation destroyed? I picked up the newspaper, glanced at it, and threw it back on the desk. Tom, why so agitated? The matter hasn't been investigated yet, and you're already convicting me? Still need investigation? The evidence is conclusive. Tom pointed at the computer screen, their plan is already out. Now the whole industry is laughing at Lynn. Is that so? I smiled, then why not make the joke even bigger? I immediately contacted my father, having him use connections to have the police intervene simultaneously in the investigation of Simon's commercial espionage. Before the press conference, all evidence would be ready. I had the assistant convene a press conference. As soon as the news came out, the whole company exploded. Claire, are you crazy? Holding a press conference now isn't stretching your face to be slapped? Yes, Claire, think thrice. We should first self-investigate internally and find the mole. Tom was even more furious, jumping, Claire, you're going to destroy Lynn. I ignored them and went straight to the conference room. The press conference site was already packed with media from all sides. Flashlights kept flashing, almost blinding. I walked to the stage and sat down. The reporters opposite, like sharks smelling blood, rushed to ask questions. Claire, what explanation does your company have for plagiarizing Yadong Technology's plan? As the industry leader, why would Lynn Group do such a despicable thing? Is the mole who leaked the plan the already resigned Mr. Simon? Is this related to your marital breakdown? The questions were sharper than the last. I raised my hand, signaling everyone to quiet. Everyone, I began, my voice clearly transmitted to every corner through the microphone. I invited you today to clarify one thing. Our Lin group did not plagiarize. The audience erupted in murmurs. So Claire means Yedong Technology plagiarized you? A reporter asked loudly. You could say that. What evidence do you have? As far as we know, Yedong Technology published earlier than you. Of course I have evidence. I pressed the page turner in my hand. On the big screen behind, a document appeared. This is the patent certificate our Lin Group applied for 3 months ago for the core technical plan of the West City project. And Yedong Technology has been established for only half a year. I would like to ask, how did a company established for half a year independently develop technology we patented 3 months ago? Below the stage, there was dead silence. All reporters widened their eyes, looking at the patent certificate on the big screen, faces full of disbelief. I continued, as for why Yedong Technology could get our plan, I think we need to ask its actual controller, Mr. Simon. Mr. Simon, as my ex-husband and former executive of Lin Group, used his position to steal company trade secrets, conspired with his lover Miss Lily, who is my own sister, intending to damage Lin's interests. We have solid evidence and have reported to the police. I pressed the page turner again. The big screen started playing a video. It was the scene of Simon and Lily arguing in the ward. Have you forgotten our original plan? Once the storm passes, I'll find a way to get the shares back. If it weren't for your bit of brains to help me get Lin's shares, I wouldn't be with a Phoenix man like you. Every word was crystal clear. The scene exploded completely. Business war, marital change, siblings turning against each other, mistress, each element was enough to ignite public opinion. I looked at the flashing lights below, my heart ice cold. Simon, Lily, this is just the beginning. The press conference's effect was immediate. Public opinion reversed instantly. Lin Group went from plagiarizer to victim. Yedong Technology's website was crashed by angry netizens. The company's stock price fell accordingly, evaporating nearly 30% in one day. And Simon and Lily became rats crossing the street, everyone shouting to beat them. The police soon intervened, taking Simon away on suspicion of commercial espionage. Lily, being pregnant, was placed under residential surveillance. My mom called me crying, cursing me over the phone. Claire. Do you have any conscience? She's your own sister. How can you treat her like this? Mom, I interrupted her, when she and Simon schemed against me, did she think of me as her sister? She was just momentarily confused. Deceived by that bastard Simon. Why can't you forgive her once? Forgive? I laughed. Mom, do you know that when Simon told the kidnappers to tear the ticket, Lily was right beside him? Do you know that the child in her belly was conceived while I was drinking 2 years of Chinese medicine to get pregnant? Do you know that the money they used to start the company was what I gave Simon to honor you? With each sentence I said, my mom's breathing became more rapid. Enough. Stop. She screamed to interrupt me. No matter what, you can't push her to death, she still has a child in her belly. The child is Simon's, not mine. Her path is her own choice, no one to blame. Claire. How did I give birth to such a cold-blooded and heartless daughter? She said and hung up. I held the phone, listening to the busy tone, without any ripple in my heart. Cold-blooded? It was them who forced me to this point step by step. In the afternoon, Tom knocked and entered my office. His face no longer had the previous arrogance, replaced by a complex expression. Claire, He hesitated for a long time. Before, I was blind to Mount Tai, don't take it to heart. Tom, you're too serious. I looked up at him, we're all for the company's good. Yes, he nodded repeatedly, this move of yours is really brilliant. Not only cleared the company's suspicion but also annihilated the opponent in one stroke. Hi. Really high. I smiled, non-committal. The West City project, next, will still need Tom to put in more effort. Rest assured. I'll devote myself fully, until death. After sending Tom away, I leaned back in the chair, somewhat tired. This battle seemed won. But I knew it wasn't over. As long as Lily and my mom were there, this farce wouldn't end easily. Sure enough, a few days later, my mom brought Lily storming into the company. At that time, I was in an important project meeting. My mom pushed open the conference room door and rushed in, followed by Lily wrapped tightly with mask and sunglasses. "Claire! Get out here!" My mom stood with hands on hips, like a shrew cursing in the street, completely without her usual ladylike elegance. Everyone in the conference room stopped, looking at this sudden scene. I frowned. "Mom, I'm in a meeting. If there's something, wait until after." "I can't wait." She rushed to me, pointing at my nose. "Today you must go with me to the hospital and take your sister home." "Home?" I countered. "Which home? Yours or mine?" "Of course our home. My home doesn't welcome mistresses and their bastards." My words were like a resounding slap on my mom's face. She trembled with anger, raising her hand to hit me. I didn't dodge. But her hand was caught by my dad. My dad, who had arrived unnoticed, stood behind her with a grim face. "Have you made enough fuss?" He growled lowly. "Isn't it embarrassing enough?" "James. You still know embarrassment?" My mom shook off his hand, pointing at me. "Look at the good daughter you raised. Denying all kin. Driving her own sister to death. She's seeking her own death." My dad retorted unceremoniously. "You." My mom was choked with anger. Lily stood aside, seeing my dad, trembling with fear. She took off her sunglasses, revealing a pitiful crying face. "Dad, sister, I know I was wrong, forgive me. I won't dare again." Saying that, she tried to kneel to me. I sidestepped. "Don't, I can't accept it." "Sister," she grabbed my hem, crying harder, "for the child's sake, spare me this time. He's still so small, can't be without a father. The child without a father is your and Simon's responsibility, not mine." I coldly brushed off her hand. "Lily, put away this hypocritical act, it makes me sick." "Claire." My mom screamed again. "How can you talk to your sister like that?" "Then how should I say it?" I looked at her. Congratulate her on being pregnant with my ex-husband's child? Wish them 100 years of harmony and early precious son? You're simply unreasonable. The unreasonable ones are you. I finally couldn't endure any more. One treats her daughter as a tool to seize family property, the other treats her sister as a stepping stone to rise. You mother and daughter are a perfect match. My dad's face became increasingly ugly. He signaled the bodyguards behind. 2 bodyguards immediately stepped forward, one on each side, holding my mom and Lily. "Take them away." My dad's voice had no warmth. "In the future, without my permission, they're not allowed to step into the company." "James. You dare." My mom struggled, shouting. Lily was also terrified, her face pale, crying, "Dad. No. Dad." But no one paid attention. They were soon taken away from the conference room. The farce finally ended. In the conference room, you could hear a pin drop. Everyone looked at me, with sympathy, awe, and schadenfreude in their eyes. I took a deep breath and sat back. Let's continue the meeting. After driving that mother-daughter pair out of the company, days became much quieter. The West City project, without competitors, was smoothly secured. The company's operations gradually got on track. My prestige in the company also steadily solidified. Simon's case soon went to trial. Commercial espionage, plus the evidence I had Mike collect of him previously using his position to accept kickbacks and embezzle public funds. Multiple crimes punished together, he was sentenced to 10 years. On the sentencing day, I didn't go. Mike told me the result. He said Simon kept looking at the gallery in court, as if searching for someone. But the people he was looking for, none went. I didn't go, my dad didn't, my mom and Lily didn't either. He was betrayed by all, utterly defeated. This was exactly the result I wanted. On Lily's side, as an accomplice and in lactation period, she got probation. She moved out of that villa and lived back in the Lynn family old house with my mom. I heard she gave birth to the child, a boy. My mom was very happy, holding her grandson all day, showing off everywhere. As if that child could wash away all of Lily's stains. They tried to contact me a few times, nothing but wanting me to help them for the child's sake. I ignored them all. My dad turned a blind eye to this. He no longer managed that mother-daughter pair but tacitly allowed them to live in the old house. I knew, in his heart, he still considered that thin family tie. I didn't care. I put all my energy into work. Under my leadership, Lynn's performance soared, expanding several new business areas. I became a famous iron lady in the business world, decisive and resolute. No one dared call me Miss anymore, everyone respectfully called me Claire. I thought days would pass peacefully like this. Until that day, I received an unexpected call. It was from Simon's mother, my former mother-in-law. Claire, it's Mom. On the other end came an old and humble voice. I was stunned for a moment before realizing who it was. In 3 years of marriage with Simon, I had seen this mother-in-law only once at the wedding. She was a typical rural woman, timid and reticent. Simon said she was in poor health, not used to big city life, so he kept her in the hometown. Every month, I had Simon send her living expenses. Between us, there was almost no interaction. Is there something? My tone was polite but distant. Claire, Mom knows, it's Simon who wronged you, he's not a thing, he got his retribution, serves him right. She said and started crying, but, Mom begs you, for the sake of our mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relationship, go see him, okay? He's almost gone. I frowned. What's wrong with him? He has cancer, late stage. She cried breathlessly, the doctor said, just these few days, he wants to see you one last time. I was silent. Honestly, I had no feelings left for Simon. Love or hate, all dissipated with that lawsuit. Whether he lives or dies now has nothing to do with me. Claire, Mom begs you. On the other end, she was still pleading bitterly, just pity this old woman, okay? I have only this one son. I felt somewhat irritated. But in the end, I inexplicably agreed. Send me the address. After hanging up, I had the driver drive to the address she sent. It was a small hospital in the suburbs. In the ward, I saw Simon. He lay on the bed, emaciated, thin to just bones. If not for that vaguely recognizable face, I almost couldn't recognize this as the once-spirited man. Seeing me, a glimmer lit in his turbid eyes. He struggled to sit up but didn't even have strength to lift his hand. His mother, that thin old woman, quickly went to support him. Claire, you came. His voice was hoarse like a broken bellows. I stood at the door, not approaching. You called for me, what's the matter? He looked at me and suddenly smiled, uglier than crying. I just wanted to see you again, cough cough. He coughed violently, almost coughing out his lungs. His mother patted his back while shedding tears. I watched this scene without any feeling in my heart. Scene enough, I said, I'm leaving. I turned to go. Wait. He urgently called me, Lily. Lily, what happened to her? She sold the child. My steps halted. What did you say? She thought the child was a burden, so she sold the child, to traffickers. Simon gasped, saying intermittently, she took that money, and ran off with a pretty boy. I turned back, looking at him. His eyes were full of despair and malice. Lily, that bitch. She's not human. For that pretty boy, she not only sold our child but also injured my mom. Cough cough. How was I blind back then, getting involved with such a venomous woman? She'll get retribution. She definitely will. He coughed violently again, each cough like tearing pain from his lungs. My mom went to find her, got beaten by her. My mom is so old, how could she do that? Claire. He looked at me, his eyes with a hint of plea. I know. I don't deserve to beg you, but, that child, he's your nephew too, please, help me, find him back. After saying another heart-wrenching cough. Looking at him, I suddenly felt this was the most ironic thing in the world. A woman who, for so-called love, abandoned husband and child to elope. A man who, for so-called prospects, betrayed his wife and stole family property. Back then, they claimed it was all for that child. Now, that child became garbage they could discard at will. Claire, consider me begging you. He was still pleading. I looked at him and shook my head. Simon, you still don't understand? That child, from the moment of birth, was destined to be a tragedy. And the ones who caused this tragedy are none other than you and Lily. You personally ruined your own lives and also ruined that child's life. Now, you want me to clean up your mess? On what grounds? I finished, no longer looking at him, turned and left. Behind, came his mother's shrill cries. I didn't turn back. Leaving the hospital, the sunlight was brilliant. Yet I felt a huge shadow over my heart, lingering. I called Mike. Mike, help me check one thing. Mike was very efficient. 3 days later, he placed the investigation results on my desk. Lily indeed sold the child. Sold to an underground organization specializing in illegal trades. She took that money and went abroad with a small thug she met at a bar. My mom went to reason with her, got severely beaten by that thug, and is still in the hospital. When my dad knew, he was so angry he smashed everything smashable in the old house on the spot. He used all connections to freeze Lily's overseas accounts. That thug, seeing she had no money, soon dumped her. Lily abroad, penniless, language barrier, lived miserably. She wanted to return but due to my dad's intervention, couldn't even buy a ticket. She called me countless times, sent countless messages begging for help. I didn't reply to any. As for the sold child, Mike also found clues. That underground organization planned to sell him to a wealthy merchant in Southeast Asia for some unspeakable uses. The transaction location was in 3 days, on a cruise ship in international waters. Mike asked me, Miss, should we? I shook my head. Report to the police. But. Mike hesitated, this way, the Lin family. I don't care. I interrupted him, even princes are punished the same as commoners if they break the law. Lily broke the law and should be sanctioned by law. As for that child, I paused, he's innocent, but I don't owe him anything. What I can do is let him return to a normal world, not be treated as merchandise, sold around. Mike looked at me and nodded. I understand. 3 days later, Interpol jointly with multiple countries' police conducted a joint arrest operation in international waters. That underground human trafficking organization was wiped out. All trafficked children were successfully rescued. Lily's child was among them. Because biological parents couldn't be found, he was sent to a local orphanage. And Lily, suspected of child trafficking, was wanted globally by Interpol. Awaiting her was severe legal punishment. All matters settled. Simon, the day after learning the child was found and Lily wanted, breathed his last. When he passed, only his pitiful old mother was by his side. My mom lay in the hospital for 2 months before discharge. After, she seemed aged 10 years, hair all white, spirit dazed. She no longer argued or fussed, just sat by the window all day, staring blankly. I visited her once. She held my hand, repeatedly saying one sentence. Claire, Mom was wrong, Mom is sorry. Looking at her, my heart had mixed feelings. I didn't say forgive, nor not forgive. Some hurts, once caused, can never be mended. I just told the nanny to take good care of her, then left. I never went back to the Lynn old house. My dad seemed to have let go a lot. He handed most company affairs to me, indulging in travel and photography, roaming the world. Occasionally, he sent me landscape photos he took, with his vigorous handwriting on the back, Claire, Dad is proud of you. I collected those photos carefully. As for me, still the busy Claire. Every day, endless meetings, endless documents to sign, endless affairs to handle. But I no longer felt tired. Because I knew everything I did was for myself. To guard the empire I built with my own hands. On weekends, I occasionally went to the orphanage to see that child. He looked a lot like Simon, but between brows and eyes, had some of Lily's shadow. He was healthy and lively, the aunts at the orphanage all liked him. I didn't tell him who I was. I just sponsored all his living and education expenses as an anonymous donor. I hoped he could grow up healthy and happy in an environment without hatred or disputes. As for his future life, where it heads, that would be his own choice.